Okay. We should be recording now. Thank you. Okay. Want to make sure everyone does know that we are recording, and if you would don't mind being on camera, that's great, being recorded. If you do not wish to have your picture recorded, please feel free to go off camera. Also, this video will be used for, will be sent out once it's YouTube ready for anyone to be able to kind of refer back to for any questions or concerns. And let me look at the right screen so I can be actually look like I'm facing people. Sorry about that. So that if you have additional questions, we're going to try to answer as many questions as possible in this environment. But I also will use this to send to anyone who applies after today's date that may not have been able to attend this to be able to get this. So you'll probably get a copy of it on a couple of different occasions. And I see that our deputy director is entering. And again, in the chat, if you can introduce yourself by sharing your name and why this work is important to you, that would be wonderful to have for us. So for those of you that are just joining, again, my name's Crystal Marion, the recruiter for this position. We're going to do quick introductions. It's 11:04. I was trying to wait until 11:05. We'll do introductions of staff, and then after that, we will begin. But as you enter, just again, feel free to give your name. And if you'd like to answer the question as to why is this work important to you, I'd greatly appreciate that. So again, my name's Crystal Marion, executive recruiter for this position. I'm going to ask my two colleagues who work with me in executive recruitment to introduce themselves, and then we'll introduce our interim director and then our deputy director. Teresa?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Camacho. I'm an executive recruiter. Pronouns are she, her. Pleasure to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Surbi Singh. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an executive recruiter along with Crystal and Teresa. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
And Cheryl?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl Miller, and I am the Interim Director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement. And I'm so glad you are all here today. Welcome.
Want to let you know that in the chat, if you are in need of captioning CART services, there's a link that we'll need to have you go ahead and go to. And then also we have two interpreters, and I am going to I thought I had pinned them, but I'm going to do that again to make sure that they are there. Okay. So at this time, let me change our view. At this time, we're going to go ahead and ask Liesel. I thought I saw Liesel on the top of my screen. I don't see her now. She's here? Okay, perfect. We're going to ask Liesel Wen if she will go ahead and start us off with introducing herself, and then we're going to share about the position. After each session or after each discussion, we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions and be able to make sure that you have all the information you need to be able to apply for this position.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation and your interest in this position. My name is Lisa Wendt, and I am the Deputy Director at the Oregon Department of Human Services and have had the pleasure to work with Cheryl Miller, who's in the interim role supporting the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement, and have been supporting the office since it came over to our agency. So let me give you a little bit of background. In 2021, Senate Bill 778, sponsored by Senator Jama, passed legislation that established the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement in the state of Oregon. This is a model that has been used in other parts of the country, and he's been a huge champion. And really, the vision for the position and for the office was to be originally in the governor's office and was to look at policy across state government, across state agencies, work with local jurisdictions as well to understand both gaps in policy and potential solutions. And then the office did move over again with an amendment to the original legislation to the agency in 2022. And Senator Jama's thought behind that was there was, various elections happening, et cetera, and with changes in a governor wanted to make sure that the office was a bit protected from politics and make sure that the work could continue regardless of who was in office. So there was a bit of a strategic direction there. And as some of you may know, we, through our self-sufficiencies program, have the state refugee coordinator within our agency. And so there was a natural alignment with the Department of Human Services. There's a line specific in the legislation that I wanted to mention because I think it really sets the intention for the office and thus for our next leader, which is to develop integrated strategies to support immigrant and refugee populations, policies, etc. So as we've had the office for a couple years, and obviously the world has changed dramatically since the legislation was first introduced by the senator. What we're learning and what we're looking for is somebody who has deep policy expertise, and that could be at a national, state, local level. Somebody who's familiar with analyzing policy, interpreting policy, etc. Ideally, someone who has some experience in the public sector. Doesn't necessarily mean they have needed to work in the public sector. I think one of the unique parts of this position, just to be really transparent, is in the public sector, you have a bit more visibility on your work, and you have a little bit less flexibility than you would operating outside of the public sector. And it's a dance we all have had to learn and learn every day. And so somebody who can be comfortable operating in that public sector space. So there is some independence from our agency with this office, and ultimately they report up to Fair Board's our director. Fair Board's reports to a governor. So there are some parameters around that term of independence, and so just want to be clear about that. The other skill set that we're looking for is somebody who understands community-based organizations, who understands there's all sorts of different perspectives within community, and somebody who can balance various voices and ideally build a coalition. I mean, one of the things that we have also learned over the last several years is in order to influence policy at a state level in particular, we have to have a coalition and we have to have alignment of voices if we are to be successful. And so someone who has those diplomacy, those communication, and collaboration skills are very important. And then also this person will be managing a small team, and so some ideally experience managing staff. So those are some of the high level attributes that we're looking for. And I'm able to stay on until 11:30. So I am also happy, Crystal, if we want to pepper some questions, I'm happy to take some of those right now. And then Cheryl will be on the entire time, so she can also answer questions that come up after I leave.
Great. For the information you've heard so far from anyone, is there a question? And if there are questions in the chat, Teresa, if you can help with that, that would be great. And some of the information that's going into the chat right now, Lisa, is pretty much their introductions and just saying why this work matters to them. And I see a question. Go ahead, Christopher.
Get so used to Teams, you gotta switch to the Zoom. Hey, love being here, and I love this particular process. I think it's very helpful for us to all understand the position, but also where you all are going with it. My question, and this is a question I ask with other policy experts, and I'm always curious to the answer. I kind of find it fascinating, but at the federal level, the actual policies that are going into place, what what concerns this office, not concern, what things should us as potential applicants or us as considering this be aware of, or what things are you really concerned or need to be aware of right now at the federal level? And I preface it with, as I ask this question, especially with healthcare leaders, um, they tend to say nothing yet.
Mm. Hmm.
That's a tendency, nothing yet. And so but I haven't asked in this policy realm yet. So that's my question. It's like, what's going on and how does it affect you, and what are you seeing that's actual reality?
It's a fantastic question, and the reality changes, as you know, every couple hours. So, no, I'll give you a pretty candid answer. So, I think a couple things. One is we are a sanctuary state, and so we do have strong support from Department of Justice and the governor's office in what does that mean to be a sanctuary state as federal policy is changing. So, this role, I do think will have deep relationships with our Department of Justice colleagues. The Civil Rights Unit has been taking the lead on the sanctuary state training. And I think this office will be key in working with them of what does it mean when X policy gets announced or X executive order. What we're coming to learn is it takes a few days and weeks to figure out what those policy implications are. It's an ongoing review process, but I do see this person playing a very strong role, working alongside those two offices and figuring out what things mean, and then working with. We've met a few times with our federal delegation staff to give Oregon's perspective, so that they have that when they're in conversations, in Congress. So I think it'll take a heightened role in that particular space where it hasn't actually been a significant focus for the last couple of years, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
And just to give a specific example, and Cheryl can speak more to this, one of the things that this office is helping us work with other colleagues across the state enterprise is what happens if there are unaccompanied children in the United States who don't have parents. And so there's been processes in the past. What might that look like at a small level, and then what might that look like if it unfortunately would happen to a larger scale? So a lot of work with the Department of Education, schools, healthcare, et cetera, to figure out what is Oregon's response and how do we be organized and prepared for that. So that's a very specific example, but again, a critical role that Cheryl and the team have been playing as we try to get organized and prepared in Oregon.
That did lead me to another question. I'm sorry, and if anyone else has their hand raised, I will shut up. I'm bad at I get to talk. Real fast. What recent case law? This is something that at the Office of Procurement Equity, where I'm currently the program manager, like we pay attention closely to what the case law is saying, and it helps us understand kind of what the rhetoric is happening or not. Is there any recent court cases, maybe in the last two Supreme Court cycles or any of the Ninth Circuit stuff, that's really causing you pause, or anything else that maybe us as the applicant pool should be aware of?
That's a great question. And I think our DOJ, I think Cheryl, we can follow up with Allison. I bet she might know something that can be more specific. I don't want to get over my skis on a legal question, but appreciate it. The two other things I didn't mention before, ideally, we're also looking for people who have lived experience themselves within their community, within their family, to be in this role. It is a very special role, and we're aware that all the attributes we're looking for probably don't exist in one human being. And so you also have our commitment. We're already planning an onboarding process of making sure that we're supporting somebody to be successful, just understanding ODHS, understanding state government, understanding the supports that you'll have around you. So you won't be alone in this position. We're very, very proud to have this in the agency and want to support the person and the team as much as possible.
Any other questions?
Crystal, there is a question in the chat, and it says, is that position hybrid, remote, or on-site?
The position is hybrid. You will have opportunities where you will need to probably travel throughout the state of Oregon, as well as participate in in-person executive level meetings or meetings. So yes. Did I ask
Hi.
any more questions? I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
awesome. Hi, my name is Diana Sanchez Vega. Is there a more like of a tier to considering first folks that are already working for state and then, or is it just open at the same level? I know sometimes there's a preference or priority given to folks that are already part of state.
No, this position is open competitive, so everyone who actually meets the qualifications and the attributes can apply. We're looking at everyone.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
There are two more questions.
Yes.
One of the questions there says, are there any specific protracted crisis or policies that immigrant and refugees in Oregon are most impacted by? What are the biggest barriers locally?
I'll start, and maybe Cheryl, you can fill in. I think two things in particular we have been focused on are people who have arrived in Oregon that are in asylee status, who aren't able to be served by our refugee program, and have been working closely with the Port of Portland, City of Portland, Multnomah County to provide support for those folks. So that's been a large piece of our work. I think the ongoing challenge is having enough legal services and supports to folks who are coming into Oregon. That continues. There is funding, but just not enough.
I would echo that. We have people living all over Oregon, and a lot of our focus is on the metro area, but in reality, people are in other places. And how can we fully support everyone? And that this office, and I think the other challenge is we can get hyper focused on the crises, but realizing we need to focus on immigrants, refugees, and non-citizen migrants or new Oregonians, which how I prefer to describe them. And how can we develop those strategies that encompasses all of those communities without being too focused on one area? I think that's really critical. Housing resources, we're just that one's at the top of the list. And with changes at the federal level, that can change folks' opportunity to work or opportunity to pay their rent, just the basic necessities, and how we can keep things moving with that in mind.
Thank you. I see a hand from Christopher.
Hey, thank you again. And I see there's a couple questions in the chat too. So I apologize to those folks. This is to Cheryl Miller. Ms. Cheryl Miller, like what you just said was like something that I've heard too, especially being out in the rest of the Oregonian community. Is there effort? But the things that we see as barriers to some of the other things that we're doing is the affordability of the state for regular folks just to thrive in the state. And then I think of new Oregonians coming into the state, like they have that barrier plus. So how is there efforts to help more of these new Oregonians get out into the rest of Oregon rather than to the metro area? Because that's where I keep seeing the opportunity in other places in Oregon. I see economic saturation here, and especially in the Portland area. And I see all kinds of opportunity further away. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, we have recognized that. And I think even the community-based organizations are realizing that, yes, we need to go beyond Washington, Clackamas, Multnomah County. And we have seen people move down to Lane County, moving down to Marion County. There is a whole group of folks out in Eastern Oregon and Ontario. So we do recognize that there are other opportunities, job employment opportunities, And we're working either with community-based organizations or resettlement agencies to be supportive of that effort.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Crystal, there are two questions in the chat, and then Mariana Enriquez also has a question.
Okay, let's go with one of the questions in the chat, and then we'll go, or actually, I'm sorry, let's go with Mariana, and then we'll go with the two questions in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be with you all this morning, and thank you for the opportunity to engage in this information session. It's such a wonderful practice that I'm so excited to be a part of. I currently serve as the director of the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion over at the Oregon Department of Education. And as part of that role, I've had the beautiful opportunity and privilege to work on the Immigrant Refugee Student Success Plan that was also sponsored by Senator Jama. And in my work with that Student Success Plan and rule adoption and implementing that legislation, a big part of my commitment in this role is to identify community-driven solutions and strategies. And in order to do that, authentic community engagement is required. And for the immigrant refugee community, as you all know, it's extremely dynamic and it houses various identities that are often intersectional with other marginalized social identities within our systems and institutions. And so my question is, what structures do you currently have in place for that authentic community engagement? Is it all virtual in nature? Are there in-person opportunities to kind of share space with community to really arrive at those community-driven solutions? That's really kind of, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm going to ask if you, or I'm not sure if your community engagement staff person's here, but if you would want to respond to that question.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I did hear all of it. I had some breaking up, but we are very involved with community. In fact, I have a member of my team that's been part of that work that you were describing at the Oregon Education Department. She actually even participated on scoring some of the recent, proposals that you received. And so we are actively involved. We're looking to be connected not only with other state agencies, but with community. We've been working on a bill with community, and that was with the Oregon Migrant Rights Alliance and the Oregon Resettlement Agency Coalition, which is critical because these are very important partners in this work. And it goes across those individuals who've come through the ORR program, and then people who have come here seeking a new life and are asylum seekers. And so we can't do this work without collaboration. And in looking at the bills, our policy analyst is here on the call, and she has looked at every bill related to immigrants and refugees and did bill analysis on them. And we host twice a month a Zoom meeting with our partners around legislation. So folks are aware of what's happening, can have conversation. We know who's supporting what bills or who are moving bills forward. And so it's a very collaborative environment, and I think that's important, but not only with our external partners, but with our internal partners as well. And I should say that it's just so much work that has to be done together. And hopefully, like I said, I didn't hear everything you said, but hopefully that touched on, and if not, please ask a follow-up question.
Also, Lisa put some information in the chat in regards to the strategic community engagement work.
All right, Crystal,
Yes.
I have a couple more questions. The first one says, what are the top two challenges that a previous director faced, and what type of support was offered?
It's a great question. I put a few answers in the chat just to try to keep up and manage time. I think a couple challenges were having the position initially hired and housed in a governor's office, which is a very different structure than a state agency, and then coming over to a state agency right about the same time that new arrivals were coming into Oregon, which was, as Cheryl mentioned, a bit of a crisis that needed a response. So I think it was kind of a perfect storm of not a great opportunity to be onboarded and really ultimately develop a strategic plan for the office. So the goal of this new position, getting hired at this time, is to exactly do what so many of you are mentioning of listening to community. What is the strategic plan? And making sure that, Senator Jama and other key legislators are supportive of that and being clear what the lane is, so to speak, for what this office does versus what Department of Justice does versus what Governor's office does versus what the state refugee coordinator does. So we'll need to work through, that's been an ongoing challenge, is what's the lane for each of those and how to be clear about what unique space this particular office holds, which really is that developing policy coming from community and then figuring out with elected officials and others where and how to advocate for those policies versus service delivery, which is our state refugee coordination team's role. I hope that helps, but I'm happy to have any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Teresa, next question.
What is the team's environment for teamwork?
I answered it literally. I wasn't sure what the question exactly was, but we do use Microsoft Teams, if that's the question. Many of our staff, particularly leadership staff, work primarily hybrid and remotely. I like to think we use Teams pretty effectively. We use Teams channel and have various places to collaborate. And then, as Cheryl mentioned, different spaces to gather together as our leadership team, and then obviously out around the state listening to community.
Thank you, Lisa. And then there's a person in the chat. It's hard to pronounce. I'm having a hard time pronouncing their name, and I don't want to chop it. It's the NCHE. Can you please unmute and ask your question? You said you had a question.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Can you help me pronounce your name so that I don't?
My name is Nchedochukwu Inyama.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity of attending today's event. My question is, how close does the Office of Immigrant work close with the nonprofit community in Oregon? How close do they work with the nonprofit organization here in Oregon?
Thank you for that question. I can say when I mentioned the Oregon Migrant Rights Alliance, that's a lot of community-based organizations throughout Oregon. We also spend time, as I mentioned, finding other organizations that are not just in the metro area to ensure that we are reaching everyone that we need to. We're ensuring that we're also connecting with a diverse group of community-based organizations that work with Africans that have come from the continent of Africa, like the Oregon Southwest Washington African Community Development Center, SOS with Mr. Ali, or MET with the Muslim Educational Trust or Latino Network. So what I'm saying is we know with Slavic groups, with Asian and Southeast Asian groups, we really are trying to be as inclusive as possible to ensure that all the needs are met because it's different for every community and ensure there's participation in the process. And so we've done a lot of work to even involve folks in this process as well.
Thank you very much. And I have a second question also. How many staff in the Office of Immigrants actually have lived as a migrant, and what is their experiences? What are their experiences? Because for me, I lived in Malaysia for almost a decade and a half. So this whole thing, I saw that is migrant centers whereby collaborating, creating a very good relationship between the migrant and the host country, America. So I want to know, is there anyone who among us that has these experiences, maybe one person who have gone through this that can, help one to integrate?
Yes, we have, including the director, there are 4 staff. So there are 2 policy one policy person. Then we have an individual that works with community engagement, and then we have a support staff individual. And all of them except myself have lived experiences. So they're extremely helpful, have worked in the community, have, experience with having connections with different groups throughout the community. So they have a breadth of experience that will be helpful to the new director and to help navigate, have longstanding relationships. One of our staff has worked also with SSP and has had that connection with resettlement agencies and community-based organizations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. Marina, I'm sorry, Mariana, please forgive me.
Thank you. Another question that I have, how would the success of this legislation be measured, and what role does the individual that is in this position play in that evaluation and in the improvements that are identified because of that evaluation?
So this legislation it's Senate Bill 149. The amendment should drop. 149 was a placeholder bill. It develops a coordinated access program so that when people do arrive to Oregon, it asks for a statewide coordinator and a hotline. And this will allow that just coordination of support. We have found that, for example, someone arrives at the airport. The Port of Portland's like, okay, who do I call? Then we would like to see that more coordinated. And so to measure our success, we will see that people are supported timely. They are connected with a resource that can shelter them. They're connected to legal support. So if they need to apply for asylum or apply for an employment authorization document, all that can happen with the support of the organization that will be coordinating that work, along with community-based organizations that will receive grant funding statewide to support people. So the focus won't just be on the metro area, but throughout Oregon, and then we'll be able to measure how many people were served in these communities. It's difficult to do that without having that coordinated access program, because then you just have a community-based organization here and there, and there's no true coordination. But we hope to be able to write an RFP that will have the detailed reporting requirements so that we can then say to legislature, well, this program is successful because we served this many people, this many families. They received housing. They only needed 2 months. They got employed right away. I mean, just really, they received case management services and access to other housing supports that are available in Oregon.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yes.
So having experience with evaluating programs at the grantee level and also at the state level, there's a difference when we are evaluating our success externally, with a budget for external evaluation versus internally with our own kind of continuous improvement model. And so my follow-up question would be, is there an opportunity for external evaluation to kind of create a more validated perspective of the success that the program is having either now or in the future, or would that be something that is just done in a more kind of internal space through continuous improvement models?
We have had some discussions about that and how we would like to have community involvement. As I mentioned, we worked with the Oregon Migrant Rights Alliance, and that coordination portion is their part of the bill. There's another part of the bill that's related to extended case management, which is related to the resettlement agencies. And that portion is only changing their statute to allow them some more flexibility of serving folks that need to change statuses due to some of the federal changes. And then there's a third portion of the bill that gives the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement a little more strength in applying for grants, and because we've applied for 2 grants and received them. And so to acknowledge we can do that work, but then that money is sent to community to do the work. And so we've had conversations about really working collaboratively together to figure out what we want to measure, what kind of reporting we want to have. And so that will be worked out through not within the legislation, but through engagement with community and through the contracting process.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Crystal,
And
we have
rulemaking. I should have threw rulemaking too, and through the rulemaking process.
Thanks, Cheryl.
sorry.
Yes,
Sorry,
Teresa?
Cheryl. We have 6 more questions in the chat and another person that has another question. So let me read some of the questions.
Okay.
It says, is there any intention for this position to collaborate with and support the work that VOLACs and partner RAs are already doing?
So for the when you say RAs, are you referring to resettlement agencies, or if you could describe those acronyms for me?
Yeah, I believe this
Yeah,
question was from Sean.
yeah, thanks, Cheryl. I was really asking, and I think Liesel was able to answer that previously in the chat, but it was really about what sort of role resettlement agencies and other national boards that work to resettle immigrants or refugees, and what that collaboration looks like within this.
Yeah, I could barely hear you, but with resettlement agencies, yes, they were part of the bill that we just worked on. So there was collaboration. And I think what was really important about that work is it brought resettlement agencies and the CBOs together to work collaboratively to bring forth a bill that they can both support. And I think that was amazing. It was work that they had not successfully done before. And I can tell you what led up to that is back in November, we held a legislative school. We partnered with a local organization, and it really taught the value of coming together, realizing that you might have different approaches, but there's commonalities. And how can you support both moving forward to ensure that your legislation can move? Because if you come across fragmented and broken and in disagreement, that's not going to be successful. And so we have seen the results of that already. And so their hearing is coming up soon. But yes, there's a lot of collaboration that has to be done, not only with resettlement agencies, community-based organizations, other state agencies, but even counties and folks working in housing and sheltering and community colleges. So there's workforce investment boards. I mean, the list can go on and on and on.
Thank you, Cheryl. Teresa?
One more question. It says, knowing that healthcare is critical, how is this addressed or supported through this position?
Well, in Oregon, we have the Oregon Health Authority, which is our expert on healthcare. And we have currently we have the Healthier Oregon program. And that program covers all immigrants, refugees, and non-citizen migrants, new Oregonians. So people are covered by healthcare in Oregon. We have driver's license for all. We have universal representation, which provides legal support for folks. And so there's a lot of coverage already in Oregon.
Thank you. Any other questions, Teresa?
Yeah, just a couple more.
Okay.
Are there examples of positive or negative outcomes from adapting best practices, case studies, or success stories from other geographies?
That's a good question. And I would have to say because since I've been involved with the office, our focus has been on some of the things that I've told you, I think already, I've spoken about already with supporting our new arrivals to Oregon. I think we've learned a lot of lessons there of what we can do better. And this is why now we're trying to build a program, because we've had to go back to the legislature multiple times to ask for money. And then when that money's gone, you're stuck, you don't have any money. So this time we're establishing a program so you know you'll have some resources. The other thing is that we've learned that we can't leave out foundations. Foundations are critical to this work, and there are some supportive foundations in Oregon, and that we can come together. And so, but have studies been done to not yet? I think that's work that needs to happen in the future.
All right. Can you talk about the makeup of the rest of the team and how many people are managed by this position?
Yeah. Well, we have a support staff person, we have a policy analyst, we have a community engagement manager. And if any of the bills go through, for every single bill that's out there related to immigration, and not immigration, immigrants and refugees, if they mention the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement and they have some requirement for us to do, then we look at that and we'll say we need another position, in order to fulfill that work should that bill pass. But currently, those are the positions that we have. And you can see that in the statute. If you look at the statute, it will tell you all the positions.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl Chukwu had a question.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. You can just call me by my English name, Franklin. That would be good. Just call me Franklin. All right, I have a question. My question goes like this. Which rep members and senators in the legislatures that have political interest in refugees, migrant interest, which rep and senators that advocates for these rights?
Yeah, I'll start with our Senate Majority Leader, Senator Casey Jama, who created this office. He is a champion. But there are others, Senator Pham, Senator Nguyen, and I have on my team who has worked in the legislature with a number of those folks. Can you name a few other folks? I think she's on the call. Let me see.
She is.
Hi. So I don't want to speak for the present and future interests of our legislators, but to Cheryl's point, yes, when this office was passed, it was the chief sponsors of this bill did include Senator Casey Jama, currently Senator Przansky, and it was carried in the House by then Representative Con Pham, and currently and who's now transitioned over to the Senate side, so Senator Pham. And in the past, this office has worked through our community advocates to kind of advance legislation that would, particularly in the housing space, and that was done in collaboration with Representative Huang Nguyen.
Thank you, An.
I have one more question again.
Mm-hmm.
How many refugees or immigrants, Senate bill and House bill, do you think may move forward as today at 5 p.m. being the deadline?
I can't give you an answer for that because this is why. That is why we wanted this coordinated access program. That is not tracked today for non-citizen migrants.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, the more you do that in this environment, the more challenging that even becomes.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the questions. And we're going to, I see Diana's hand is up.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Crystal. Is there any, for this position, is there any need to coalesce with the business community, or are there any interactions with the business community here in Tennessee? Unfortunately, we don't have such a friendly environment. And so, as part of the work that I do, we go the route of legislator, we go the route of nonprofit resettlement agencies, but at the end of the day, we also realize that pulling in the business community to kind of leverage, especially self-sufficiency for immigrants and refugees is critical. Are there any opportunities or requirements for this position to do that? Or is that, I know Lisa was saying before, stay on the lane. Is that there's another area or office in state that does that?
I think that could be part of the state strategy for immigrants and refugees. I mean, I know we've had conversations about making connections with workforce investment boards and WorkSource and the Oregon Employment Department, because yes, there are needs and there are gaps that immigrants and refugees can fill in our workforce.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Christopher?
Hey, one more. Actually, I don't have a question. This is a little bit interesting. So, yesterday, all the agency directors should have got this, but we just launched an 11% small business target for the state, and maybe you got it, Cheryl Miller, and I don't know, but this came out from the governor's office and a couple other places. But as you guys are talking about kind of the workforce and the workforce elements, that this particular program could support what you all are doing, regardless of who you choose for this position. I hope we can interact, because this particular program can serve those communities in a real, true way. And my particular office is already networked with demographic specific chambers across the state. So regardless of who I'm saying this just because we're having this interaction. It's not applicable to me, myself, especially trying to get this job. But this office, there's cross opportunity here that we should probably talk about as this rolls out, and with your agency, with your designated procurement official for OHA and DHS. We should talk more, because it could really help and support all of your efforts, and help us help the whole state accomplish that target for 11% spend of all of our funds to small businesses in the state.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think when you look at Senate Bill 149, you'll see some of the strengthening of this office is to ensure that we work across state agencies to meet the needs of immigrants, refugees, and new Oregonians.
Yeah, our House bill is the one that we just did was House Bill 2337. It doesn't have that target, but it sets that small business and that coordination and that comes from DAS. And so I'm going to look at this and track this too, because this could also help with some of our efforts and some of the other things we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
I do see a question about the projected level of job security in case federal funding is cut. This is a general funded office.
We have a couple more questions in the chat too. Are we ready for those?
Let's go with those two questions, and then we'll take the last 5 minutes just to talk about the interview phases.
Okay. One of the questions says, what is the office annual budget and where do these funds come from? Is future funding fairly secure?
The Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement, the funding is from Oregon's general fund. It's a $2 million budget for the biennium, which means there's about a little bit over $1 million for each year of the biennium. Remember, we're not a service, so a lot of our work is around community engagement, advocacy, one of the things we could do is begin to do some work around tracking information with some of these new grants so that we could provide reports. But that's what our focus is on. I think Liesl talked about it quite a bit about policy, strategic planning, advocacy, connection with community, building a coalition. That's what a lot of our work is around. And the next question. And when you ask the question, is future funding fairly secure? I can't answer that question because of course we don't know what's going to happen with the federal government and how it impacts Oregon, but this office is funded through general fund dollars, not federal dollars.
Okay, ready for the last question?
Yes.
Okay, with the gap in foreign assistance funding from the federal budget, will the OR state level government be amenable to strategic partnerships with multilateral donors, UNICEF, UNCHR, to provide front-end interventions that better prepare immigrants and refugees before they arrive?
So we currently do not receive for the I don't know if ORR receives funding, for the resettlement agencies through those groups, but our community-based organizations do not. I do know they have sought a lot of funding, and some of them have received funding from some of our philanthropic organizations, and that's where I see that happening more frequently for them. But foreign assistance funding, I don't see how that connection would work. And I see on from our office even said we do not work with IGO. So yeah, I haven't seen that happen.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, Teresa? So what I'm going to ask, Franklin, if you can put your question in the chat, and I just want to go over really quickly the recruitment process so that everyone's aware. The 13th, this position will close. We will then, actually, we're screening beginning on the 31st and we'll end on the 13th, 14th, and then we'll send notifications out to applicants in regards to status. Those that are moving forward to the interview process, we will notify you by email. And in that email, the first process will be the video interview. Video interviews will be from April the 16th through the 20th. Those moving forward after that. Panel interviews, which are virtual. Panel 1 and Panel 2 are both virtual. That will be for Panel 1, May the 1st and 2nd. And then for Panel 2, the 7th and the 8th of May. Then after that, those moving forward, we'll go to an executive panel, which will be held on May the 16th. And then the last, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 candidates, but they will go to a community town hall, which is scheduled for May the 22nd. The executive panel and the community town hall are both in person in Salem. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that. Any questions?
No question, just kudos on the amazing recruitment process. This is so thorough and includes the voices of so many. So I think it's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we do have a few minutes left, if there are no questions regarding the recruitment interview process, I think it was.
Oh, that was a sweet question.
Okay, you saw a question. Is there a question in the chat?
He said, what motivates the interim director to do the current for the department? Well, what you don't know about me is I've been here a long time in the department, but I also worked with the new arrivals at what was called the Welcome Center in the Portland metro area for a year. And that was probably one of the most valuable work experiences I've had, and I'll never forget. It was an opportunity to meet people from all over the world who are seeking a new life in Oregon, and to see them to be able to be supported by community partners in Oregon, the state of Oregon. And many of those folks are living in homes right now, have it working on their jobs. Some folks who came here as medical doctors are following a pathway to be able to practice medicine here in the United States. I met people who were teachers, who were nurses, who were hairdressers. I mean, it just goes on. And just to be out in community and see their success, the smiles on their faces, the thank yous. I mean, it was so welcoming, and it was hard work, but it was worth it. And that's why I was willing to step into this interim role and to help get community through the legislative session so that they could collaboratively work together to move this bill forward. And so, yeah, that's why I did it. It's all about the people, and I think that's the most important thing for this job is, yeah, there's all the collaboration with folks and getting the data and developing strategies, but I try to never forget why we're doing this work. It's the people, it's the families, it's the teenagers, it's the babies. That's why you're here. And when you think of that more holistically, that passion drives you to do a good job. So thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Love your heart. There is a hand, and I believe I want to pronounce the name correctly, Ariana.
Yes, thank you, Crystal. It is Oriana. And just to thank you, Cheryl, for those words. My question feels rather it's logistical and kind of boring after that passionate sharing of experience and what motivates you. I agree. At the end, it's the people that we help that make the difference and keep one going day after day. My question is, again, rather procedural. It's about the recruitment process and these multiple interviews. I wanted to know more about who would serve on these three panels. And then I had a question about the community town hall. Like, what are the main goals for that? Is it just to kind of hear from constituents and see the interaction, or will there be some kind of like feedback process? I'm just curious about the makeup of the panels and then kind of the goal or the intention for the community town hall. Thank
Great.
you.
Yes. So basically, we put out information requesting anyone that had an interest in participating on our panels, helping to write questions, or any part of this recruitment process from the immigrant and refugee community. We've sent out community information blasts to everyone. And it's really those individuals who have participated, I think, with a lot of the work that's going on now that Cheryl's office, the OIRA office currently works with. We have received multiple responses in regards to the various panels. Even from the question development process, we have people that will be on the video panels. We have people from community organizations and staff on each level or each panel. The executive panel will be made up of executive leaders in community as well as government office, Representative Jama's staff as well. And then the community town hall, it's an opportunity not just for community, but also for staff to be able to learn more about the candidates. Usually the questions are not necessarily given ahead of time, but I will give you information in regards to the focus areas for the questions. It's an opportunity for you to highlight possibly your vision, knowing what you know of the position, your vision for this position, for the office coming in, possibly how you would begin a strategy on continually working with community. So it's an opportunity for community and staff to be able to kind of get to know you, and then you get to know those that you would be working with alongside of within not just OIRA, but also other governmental entities that are working with this particular position. Does that help, Ariana?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you so much.
perfect. And I see a hand. It is now 12:02, and I just want to let everyone know that has to leave. I totally understand. I will entertain this question, and if you have any other questions that we cannot get to at this time, please put it in the chat. We will work to get that information to you. Also, we will, once this video is completed in YouTube version, we will send that out. And if you are applying for the position, there will be information being sent out to everyone that's applying in regards to the position description and other information on our timeline that you will get as well, just to be able to assist you throughout this process. I will take this last question audibly, and then any other questions that you might have, feel free to put it in the chat and we will get to those questions. Ashwak, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Hi, yeah, Ashwa. This
Ashwa.
is
Okay.
Ashwa. Yeah, just a quick follow-up on the recruitment process. So I want to get some clarity up until the town hall portion of it. Are we still looking at 2 to 3 candidates at that point, or is it only the one and final candidate that's going to be making it to the town hall portion of the interview process?
You know, for each recruitment, it varies. So for this particular recruitment, it just depends on where we get to or how we land once we're at that executive level. I'm hoping that we will have at least 3 to 4 candidates that will be able to go to the executive panel, and then we may end up taking 2, or we might end up taking 3 individuals to the town hall. Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, I want to say thank you so much for being here. It's great. I hope you were able to get the information you needed to help you along in this process. I look forward to seeing your names in the applications that are coming through. And if you have any other questions directly related to the position or the recruitment, feel free to email me. I will drop my email in the chat, or yes, really quickly. And then I will entertain any questions you might have if you'd like to email me. All right. I am going to end this call. Thank you so much for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.